media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hey, folks, today is Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. What the hell is wrong with Tennessee? They literally are saying that formerly incarcerated folks, in order to get their voting rights back, they have to actually get their gun permit. We'll talk to a Tennessee legislator about this nonsensical loophole. Also, folks, a recent report says that high corporate profits are driving inflation. We'll talk to an economist about this very issue. Also, a New York man is facing life in prison after the jury convicts him for shooting and killing a young woman who mistakenly drove into his driveway. Also, Fox hosts Charles Payne and Jessica Tarlov got into a dust-up when Payne literally said that Democrats and Biden are trashing half the country. Charles, do you watch your own network? Also, folks, we'll talk to a Republican strategist about the GOP side. Donald Trump won last night in New Hampshire, and Nikki Haley, her campaign is on the fumes, and so it's shaping up to be a repeat of 2020 between Biden and Trump. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
So Tennessee, folks, you ought to hear what they're doing to make it even harder for people who are formerly incarcerated to vote in that particular state. In order for someone with a felony to get their right to vote, they must first obtain a pardon from the governor or have a court reinstate their full citizenship rights, which includes the right to bear arms. Now, after fulfilling this, the person must then proceed with the certificate of restoration process to reinstate their voting rights. Under the Tennessee Constitution, a condition of citizenship is the right to bear firearms. However, formerly incarcerated folks are prohibited from purchasing, storing, or carrying guns. This could mean that 500,000 people in Tennessee could be barred from voting. Joining us right now is Tennessee State Representative Antonio Parkinson from Nashville. Representative Parkinson, glad to have you on the show. This is literally the craziest thing I've ever heard. So to get your voting rights back, you got to get your gun rights back. Oh, but if you were a former felon, formerly incarcerated, yeah, you can't get you can't use you can't have a weapon. What in the hell?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I found out about this situation, I met with the Commissioner of Elections, Commissioner Goins, and just because I want to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. There was a case that came down where the commissioner and the state was sued. The Supreme Court ruled that there were two separate laws that gave you pathways to get your voting rights back, and the Supreme Court, according to Goins, combined both of those laws, and the harshest one became the pathway, and that said that you had to have full citizen rights. Right. The only thing that is reflected in what is full citizen rights is what's in the Tennessee Constitution, where it says a citizen has the right to bear arms, and that's where they are coming from with the fact that you have to be basically eligible or able to bear arms in order to be able to vote.
But if those folks are barred from being able to possess a gun, they can't vote.
That's pretty much it. Now, some, if you get your felony expunged, you will be able to get the right to bear arms under some crimes, right? But here's what I suggested to the commissioner, because I'm looking for a fix, right? And so I said that we need to define what citizen rights are. Some of the things that he suggested was the right to vote, the right to bear arms, the right to serve on the jury, the right to run for office, citizen rights, right? Those four things, right? But why can it not be that you can receive some of those rights back and not necessarily some of the others? Because like you just said, under some felonies, you will never, ever be able to vote. Under some felonies, you will never, ever be able to bear arms. But under some felonies, you can do one or the other. And so what I think is going to be the fix is to ensure that we define what citizen rights are, what those rights are, and separate them so that people can attain the ones that they need without necessarily having the other in order to be able to vote or bear arms or whatever the case is.
I mean, this, again, is one of those things that let's just be honest, Republicans want to make it even more difficult for people to be able to vote. This goes back to slavery. A lot of these laws were put in place to keep black people from voting.
I agree wholeheartedly. And it's to keep, not just black people, but Democrats or other people from being able to vote. There are so many, and you know this, Roland, there are so many different impediments, rather, to getting back to life once you've been incarcerated or once you've been given a felony. And this is another one of those impediments. And when this case came down, this came down as a ruling from the Tennessee Supreme Court that said this is how the law is interpreted. And of course, the opportunity was available, and they ran with it. So, again, but there is a fix. I believe there's a fix now. Whether there's a political will here in the Tennessee legislature to actually do the fix, that's a different story.
So in order to fix this, that's going to require the legislature to actually do something. And let's just be clear, these are hardcore right-wing MAGA Republicans, and they don't give a damn about voting rights, especially people who used to be in prison.
Right. So there are two laws that gave pathways to receiving your voting rights again. One said that, you will have to receive a pardon from the governor, and your full citizen rights, right? The other one said that, you can go through these steps, you can be, pay your fines, do your time, and present, this certificate that you've completed everything, make sure you're not back on your child support and so on and so forth, and present that to the commissioner of the elections, and they will restore your rights, right? They will restore your voting rights. But when this lawsuit came up and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, they determined that both of these laws apply at the same time and not path one or path two. And so with both of them applying at the same time, it made it extremely difficult to get those voting rights back.
All right, then. Well, certainly keep us abreast of what happens. And hopefully Republicans in Tennessee will do the right thing, because this just makes no sense whatsoever.
And let me say this lastly, Roland, I will be drafting legislation to be able to parse out, you know, those different rights afforded by citizens, so that those citizens that have received a felony can go after the rights that they specifically are eligible for.
All right, then. Representative Wilkinson, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, man. Happy New Year, brother.
All right, likewise. All right, folks, going to a break. We come back. We'll discuss this with my panel, as well as delve into some other topics as well. It was a win last night in New Hampshire for Donald Trump, also for President Joe Biden. We'll talk about what's ahead for them, but also Nikki Haley, who is desperately trying to hold on and stay in the Republican presidential race. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol. We've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
This is Reggie Rock Pfeiffer with you watching
Roland Martin, unfiltered, uncut, unplugged, and undamn believable. You hear me?
Today's panel, Rebecca Carruthers. She is Vice President for Fair Election Center out of Washington, D.C. Tarun Walker, founder Context Media out of Atlanta. DeWanna Bradley, owner, publisher of Iowa Urban Media and the Urban Impact Show. Glad to have all three of you here. Rebecca, I'll start with you. And that is this. I mean, this is one of the craziest things I've heard, that in order to be a full citizen, you must also have the right to bear arms. So therefore, you got to get that back before you can get your voting rights back.
You know, that Tennessee legislator, he didn't want to just call it out as this is a very anti-Black legislative bill. He wanted to frame it as, oh, well, this is Black and brown, and this impacts Democrats. No, let's call it what it is. Right now, Tennessee has the most draconian voting restoration set of laws in the country. Full stop. It's extreme, it's harsh, it's repressive. 1 out of 5 Black Tennesseans are ineligible to vote. That's 20% of Black adults in Tennessee are not able to vote because of past felonies. And as a reminder for the audience, Tennessee is one of the most over-policed states. And so I know sometimes people are like, well, don't commit a felony. You could still have the right to vote. But if you're in a state where they intentionally over police this particular population, Black folks, then you're going to have a substantial amount of folks who are convicted of felonies. That's what's happening right now in Tennessee before you even get to this bad legislation. What this bad legislation would do, if it's enacted, is now creates a permanent civic death, where these 20% of Black adults in Tennessee will never be able to vote with this type of scheme, because it's too much of an administrative burden in order for all of these things to fall into place for that person to actually get their rights restored. And that's full stop. This is a full-on attack on Black voters in this country is happening in Tennessee right now.
It really shows you, to run. Again, how crucial things are on the state level. So much attention is focused on Congress, when the reality is we've got to be locked and loaded on the state level, because that's where voting rights are being denied. That's where polling locations are being shut down. That's where all the different things regarding voting are taking place.
No, Roland, you're absolutely right. And I think we have to be clear that, you know, the presidential elections and the congressional elections, those are the quote unquote sexy elections. Those are the things that you can always get people to turn out for, and they'll always show up for. But it's local elections, it's things like this, it's situations like this, and it's local laws, it's state laws like this that have a much stronger effect on the lives, especially for Black people and Black voters, than even presidential elections and congressional elections. And you and me have talked about this. I feel like there needs to be a much harder push from political pundits and political operatives to say that these local elections and these state elections are where you need to focus your energy on and focus your resources on, because things like this normally happen in the dark. These things happen where nobody's paying attention to them. And then when situations like this happen, which I feel like personally, this sounds like almost like sort of like a second coming of the poll tax, where you have somebody who has gone through the system for whatever reason, they served their time, but then they try to get their rights back as full citizens, and they have all these hoops they have to jump through to feel like booby traps that will set them to go back into the system again. Like if you vote and you don't have all this paperwork in place and you're back in the system, if God knows if you have a gun and you're a felon and you haven't done all this, you're definitely right back in the system. So this feels extremely dangerous to people.
Dewana, look, we know even in Iowa, the over-policing that takes place there, high incarceration rates of African Americans.
Yeah, you know, when I was hearing about this, it's really reminded me. I thought maybe the governors had spoken to each other. It was really a playbook out of our own governor's playbook, where we have similar things as well. What just surprised me was this extra added piece to it. That went above and beyond what we have. But look, what this is what it continues to be, is another way to silence the voices of African Americans. And that's just what it is. It's very appalling that individuals in Tennessee will have to go through this. But also, I do agree with the things that the panelists have saying. We really got to start focusing on these local elections. I know that's one thing here that we're really pushing individuals here in Iowa to do, is it matters who you have in office. Right now, we have a Republican-dominated legislature right now as it is. And these laws will continue to get pushed if we don't start getting people out to vote. And so it's very important. But I'm very appalled by what I was hearing in Tennessee. But it sounded very familiar here where I'm at as well.
Absolutely. And so this is going to be a constant battle. It is going to continue, not just in Tennessee, all over. And I'm really hopeful, Rebecca, that we're going to see an uprising of white women, white mothers, and young white people in Tennessee. Last year, when they were trying to silence the two Justins, as well as Representative Gloria Johnson, known as the Tennessee Three, they also were targeting many of those white folks who were coming to the state capitol who wanted action to end gun violence after a mass shooting at a school. Well, all they did was protect gun manufacturers. And so I am hopeful in the next statewide election that we're going to see massive resistance of white folks in Tennessee who are upset with how this Republican legislature is simply doing whatever they want to unimpeded.
You know, many of those moms are affiliated with Moms Demand. So I hope that many of those moms and those activists, those white women in rural areas, as well as those white women in suburbs across Tennessee, you know, I hope that they decide that, hey, this is a fight worth fighting as well. Because together, if Black folks are being denied the right to vote, it's going to impact what stronger gun legislation is going to look like in Tennessee. It's going to impact education issues in Tennessee. If we do not have Black voters actually able to vote in Tennessee, many of the progressive things, I'm not talking about progressive in terms of Democrat versus Republican, but progressive meaning moving communities forward, making sure that communities have what they need so individuals and families can live and thrive in the state of Tennessee. You need Black voters in order for those things to happen. And finally, Chuck Schumer. We need the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act passed. The only way it's going to pass if we know that it's not going to take 60 votes to end closure, meaning that it could go to the floor for there to be an up and down vote. I don't care what Sinema is saying. I don't care what Manchin is saying, but you need to bring this to the floor. You need every single U.S. senator on record. Do you support democracy or do you not support democracy?
To run the point there, and look, we saw a lot of angry white folks in Tennessee when the legislature, even where Republicans even were telling them they were holding up signs to put the signs down in committee. That would all go to the courts, and the courts were like, y'all can't do that. And now they are limiting how many people can even be in the state capitol, requiring a ticket. And so, look, we know Black folks have been in this battle, in this fight. Again, this is where white people are going to have to step up and do their part and organize and mobilize their own to get rid of these fascists.
Well, we got to be honest, though. Unfortunately, in this country, a lot of times it's very hard to mobilize white support unless white people feel like something is affecting them directly. And, you know, we saw that what happened with the abortion bill that came down from the Supreme Court. We saw that what happened with a lot of things that affect white women, or they perceive that it affects them directly. Then they want to move. Unfortunately, this particular situation is something that's going to have to be made. The parallels are going to have to be drawn home to them to get them mobilized, because what happens is it's easy to get them up there for a couple of days to have them wave a sign or two. And then a lot of times the media attention goes away. And a lot of times the momentum that they have goes away. It has to be drawn home to them every single day that the things that affect Black people will one day affect you. I think that's the only way you can get consistent messaging from our quote-unquote allies to get them on board with anything that's going on that affect Black people. That's the only way it works here.
Well, DeJuan, I think that what we saw last year with the mass shooting there in Tennessee and how Republicans did nothing in response to that, that's what pissed these folks off. You got Taylor Swift out there, really driving voter mobilization. I mean, this is one of those examples where, again, in a state like Tennessee, you don't have enough African Americans in terms of the percentage. And as Rebecca said, a significant number can't even vote due to the felony disenfranchisement there. But this is where, again, I really hope that white folks of conscience wake up and, yes, be woke and begin to say, we have got to throw these people out, and it's going to take us mobilizing and organizing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's going to take that. And I hope it doesn't take another, pandemic. It seems like during the pandemic, it seems when things were happening that people started to kind of wake up to some of these issues. So it is really going to take white people coming together and looking at these issues and speaking on it. But I really think the point is this has to be talked about continuously. We do a really great job of starting to have these conversations. We get everyone riled up. We react, and then all of a sudden we go away, and then these things are continuing to happen. So it's going to take those in Tennessee not letting this kind of die out and not letting this conversation go away. The minute this conversation goes away, things are going to stay the same, and we're going to be talking about this another, just next month, it's going to be another state. So I think it's really important that we keep raising up these things that are going on in other states, but in Tennessee. But it is going to take the majority that is there to really be vocal and speak up and wake up and stop just wishing things are going to change. It's going to take the collective work of everyone to get things moving along.
All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. We come back. You heard a lot of the criticism regarding inflation and driving up prices of food, services, and other goods. Well, guess what? Corporate greed is also behind a significant amount of this. We'll discuss that next right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Support us in what we do. Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Send your check and money orders to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037, that's 0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered, PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo is RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
Next, on the Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, author Dr. Maribel Mori, on her astounding and enlightening new book, White Philanthropy, a history we're betting you've never heard before. Don't miss an eye-opening episode of The Black Table, only on Black Star Network.
On next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we're going to be talking about common sense. We think that people have it, know how to use it, but it is something that people often have to learn. The truth is, most of us are not born with it, and we need to teach common sense, embrace it, and give it to those who need it most, our kids.
So I always tell teachers to listen out to what conversations the students are having about what they're getting from social media, and then let's get ahead of it and have the appropriate conversations with them.
On next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Latasha from the A.
And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
You've heard us talk about corporate greed being a major reason why we've had high inflation. Well, a new report confirms that. It was compiled by the progressive group Groundwork Collaborative think tank. They found that corporate profits accounted for at least 53% of inflation during last year's second and third quarters. Now, profits drove just 11% of price growth 40 years before the pandemic. Morgan Harper from the American Economic Liberties Project is here to explain this report. Morgan, glad to have you on the show. Glad to have you back.
Thanks.
So walk us through this. Okay, so walk us through this. And we've talked about it beforehand. And so explain for people who don't quite understand, blame Biden, blame Harris, blame Democrats, blame those in power, the role that companies played when it came to prices post-pandemic.
Yeah, and this is in many ways the story of our time when it comes to how much money we're spending. And so, the pandemic hits, and as we all know, that was a historic event, unprecedented, everybody trying to figure out what it meant and what the impacts of that were. And there were some concrete impacts. It hurt supply chain, so it made it harder for companies to get the goods that they needed, which increased cost. And then also, as a result of that, it was hitting all types of goods and services. So their overall, the inputs, as it's referred to, the cost of those to make whatever they're trying to sell to us were going up. And so there were legitimate reasons why prices would be increasing. But what this report is showing us is that as we get further and further away from the heart of that pandemic time, 2020, 2021, 2022, we're now seeing that prices aren't going down. And as you just cited that statistic, these companies are still making tremendous profits, but what's driving those profits are not the cost of their inputs, because those are going down. We're seeing that, a big price that was cited was like energy costs. Those are going down as like 60% in terms of how much they're driving, the cost that these companies are spending. The warehouse, transportation, those are going down 4%. So now we're left with this conclusion of like, all right, Well, prices aren't going down, and it's not the inputs anymore. And if you look at what industries the prices are continuing to rise, it's in these industries that are concentrated, where you have dominant corporations that have the ability to set prices, and they are choosing to set prices higher and passing those costs, of course, then onto us as consumers.
And again, we see it when they have these quarterly earnings reports where they are on conference calls touting, oh, we've made this, record profits, record profits, record profits, record profits. So they're admitting that they are just minting money.
Oh, it's been wild. I mean, you know, the first time I came on, Roland was talking about Kroger-Albertsons merger. And the Kroger CEO was one of those guys on these earnings calls that admitted inflation, it's great for us because it gives us a really good excuse to raise prices for people. And so they have not been hiding the 8 ball here at all. I will say it seems like in the last couple of quarters, as they know that there's more scrutiny of these earnings calls, as they know people are listening in. It used to be very much just like a Wall Street inside game. You know, the average person's not tuning into an earnings call, though maybe you could. Now that they know that there's so much attention, they are actually starting to rein it in a little bit and not be, excuse me, as explicit about some of these price increases. But the reality is what it is. The data is what it is. And they are absolutely keeping prices high. And it's when you have these concentrated industries and that much market power that they're able to do this.
Questions from my panel. I will start with Rebecca.
Morgan, thank you for being here tonight. It's good to see you again. So what does the average person in America do? Like we're seeing data and we're, seeing surveys that are saying that the economy is doing well, which it is. We also see that individual consumers are spending more, which is driving and making the economy so hot right now. But those credit card bills are coming in the mail. Like people are starting to see all of their holiday spending bills come in the mail. They now have to pay it. So what does the average consumer do when we see a lot of jacking up on everyday goods that people need in order to live and survive?
It's a great question. And yeah, good to see you again, Rebecca. So we're in 2024. As you all are discussing, as we all know, this is an election year. And we need to be listening up when some of these discussions are going on about policy decisions that our representatives are going to be making. And so here's an example of that, right? Child tax credit. That's something that is being discussed right now. There are people that oppose doing something that would lift 16 million children out of poverty, which the data shows child tax credit would do. Their argument is going to be, oh, when we did that before, that led to inflation, that increased prices. And so this is why it's so important to be having these conversations to make sure that people have the facts to be able to reach out to whoever represents them, to push back on the people in their lives that are going to try to spread this misinformation, because the facts are the facts. When we have the Biden administration that has put in strong enforcers that are going to do what they can to block this corporate concentration, when we have people in Congress that are going to push forward things like the child tax credit, that's what actually helps our bottom line as consumers. And we must make sure that those policies continue.
Tarun?
Thank you so much for this information. Really appreciate it. My question is, what can the average person in this poor and working class do to try to mitigate some of these things that are happening in corporate America that are affecting their bottom line? Is there anything that can be done on a political standpoint or anything that can be done on a personal standpoint to help push back against this, because people's backs are against the wall?
Yeah, and it's kind of building off of Rebecca's question too. I mean, the individual decision-making aspects of this are trying to work our way out of a corporate concentration crisis is, I will admit, really tricky. But talking about one fee that is imposed on us a lot that we do have some control over, and I think I've mentioned it before on the program, we have these credit card fees that get assessed when we use a credit card to pay. I mean, Rebecca also referenced, we have now $1 trillion in debt in credit cards. It might be a good time to consider not using your credit card to pay for as much of these things, because there are businesses that will give you a choice. If you use a debit card, if you pay with cash, then they're not going to impose some of these same level of fees because they're not facing the same processing costs. that's an example of like an individual decision that could potentially reduce, how much you're spending. But on the political and policy side of things, because a lot of this, like I was saying, it is just driven by how economic policy is getting set in Washington. I will admit, we need, and I should say and clarify, I work for a nonpartisan think tank, so this is getting a little bit more into the political, but we have seen the leadership from this administration to appoint enforcers at the Department of Justice Antitrust, Jonathan Cantor, Lena Khan, who's at the head of the Federal Trade Commission. These are entities that are pushing back on some of this corporate concentration. DOJ Antitrust just blocked the merger of JetBlue Spirit. If they hadn't blocked that, Spirit Airlines would have gone away. How many of us rely on, I know Columbus, Ohio, where I am, Spirit Air provides a very cheap way to get to a lot of different cities. And they were perfectly comfortable with that airline going away, and then people wouldn't have as many routes and they'd be paying more for airfare. That is what would have happened. And so we have got to protect the gains that have happened in this administration. We need to make sure that we continue these policies. And we're already seeing that Wall Street is trying to signal what they want. They're saying that if Trump is elected again, they're going to be able to see a merger spree go through. There won't be this strong antitrust enforcement. And those are the legal tools that push back on this concentration. And so, folks decide as you will, but I think we have a clear sense of where we might be headed if we don't see a continuation of the better antitrust enforcement that has happened in this administration.
Dewana.
Hey, Morgan. Nice to meet you. Thank you for this information. I just know that President Biden has been really talking about, getting consumers to stop gouging. And I know that in other countries such as France, the government intervenes in, these price negotiations. Is there anything that you see that would lend to the administration starting to do some of those things? Are they making some of those efforts to make some of those changes? I feel like this is, going to be hard as a consumer. I'm thinking, what do you do? Stop buying these things? Well, these are things that we need and we're going to pay for it. But is there anything happening where government might get involved in that capacity?
Yeah, so that was a really interesting development when you had a grocery chain in France that said, Pepsi's just too expensive, we're not carrying it anymore. We haven't seen that kind of behavior happen with a private corporation saying that some of the goods they're trying to carry or provide to their consumers are just too expensive, but it doesn't mean it couldn't happen. Now, for the government to ban that, the products being offered, that would be a little bit tricky legally. But like I was saying, we are seeing some of the most aggressive government intervention during this administration to control bring prices down and make sure that we're facilitating competition in the economy. A couple of other examples I would point to. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau just put out a rule that's going to rein in overdraft fees, banking fees that a lot of us would face if you happen to overdraw your account, which really doesn't cost the banks very much at all, but they've just been getting away with imposing $30 fees, $35 fees, what have you. That auto dealers, people that are selling cars that just rack on extra fees and don't ever have to explain them. This administration has done something to begin to rein that in, ban people from imposing those fees. And so, I do think we've seen a lot of strong government intervention. In many ways, the past 4 years in this administration has been a rediscovery of the authorities that the government has to try to lower costs for consumers and small businesses through better competition policy. And like I said, I think for all of our sakes as consumers, as small business owners, as people who frequent small businesses, it's in our best interest to see this type of policy making continue.
All right, then. Morgan, we appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
Yeah, thanks for having me. See you soon.
All right, take care. All right, folks, going to go to a break. We come back. More on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network, including last night's results in New Hampshire. Donald Trump wins. President Joe Biden wins. Nikki Haley says she is going to stay in the race. Yep, we'll see what your donors say. And even Phillips is saying, hey, I got 21% of the vote in New Hampshire. See, I'm credible. No, you're not. No, you're not. We'll just talk about it. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Grow your business or career with Grow with Google's wide range of online courses, digital training, and tools. Gain in-demand job skills with flexible online training programs designed to put you on the fast track to jobs in high-growth fields. No experience is necessary. Learn at your own pace. Complete the online certificate program on your own terms. Stand out to employers, get on a path to in-demand jobs, and connect with top employers who are currently hiring. Take one professional career certificate program or all 6. Earn a Google Career Certificate to prepare for a job in a high-growth field like data analytics, project management, UX design, cybersecurity, and more. All professional career certificate programs must be completed by December 31st, 2024. Scan the QR code to complete the application. There are 1,000 scholarships available. Grow with Google and J. Hood and Associates. Be job ready and qualify for in-demand jobs.
Critter Fixers. I'm Dr. Bernard Hodges.
And I'm Dr. Terrence Ferguson.
And you're tuned in to
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Paris Brown has been missing from St. Petersburg, Florida since December 26th. The 14-year-old is 5 feet 3 inches tall, weighs 131 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information about Paris Brown is urged to call the St. Petersburg, Florida Police Department at 727-893-7780, 727-893-7780. A white Colorado man is going to spend 39 months in prison for setting a church on fire. Darian Ray Sexton pled guilty to throwing Molotov cocktails at the Abiding Love Lutheran Church on January 19th, 2023. Sexton admitted he set the church on fire because of the religious character of the church, and he also intended to destroy the building. A New York jury has convicted a man who shot and killed a woman who mistakenly drove into his driveway. Folks, this is just beyond pathetic. Kevin Monahan was found guilty of second-degree murder, first-degree reckless endangerment, and tampering with physical evidence in the death of 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis. On April 15th, 2023, Gillis and 3 friends were in a car that mistakenly pulled into Monahan's driveway. They were looking for a friend's house in the small town of Hebron. They began to back out when they realized it was the wrong home. Monahan then came outside with a gun and fired. He faces 25 years to life in prison. His sentence is scheduled for March 1st. This right here, Torun, shows you just the deranged gun culture that we have in this country. They pulled into the wrong driveway. That's enough reason just to come out and just fire folks? Yeah. I hope his ass gets life in prison.
Unfortunately, that's the American way. Everybody in America wants to settle their differences with a pistol, and they want to settle their differences with a gun. Sorry for the delay. I'm actually in the airport, so it's looking funky. But yeah, it's really sad that we have to be able to. We can't solve issues in any other way outside of just fighting with a gun. I think what's going to happen, though, this isn't really going to move the needle on too much because, unfortunately, this sort of gun culture is so prevalent in America that nothing's really going to move. I mean, everybody feels like if there's a problem that you can't solve, pull a gun out. If there's an issue that you're having with somebody, pull a gun out. This is the sort of thing that goes on in this country. And until we get some real serious gun laws in place, you're going to see this continue and more people are going to die, unfortunately.
DeWanna?
Yeah, I have to agree. It's terrible that, that everyone's resorting to a gun. We see it here where I'm at, it's just a continuous thing. And it's almost the excuse behind the reasoning for doing something. Well, and we're saying, oh, I feared for my life, or, we're coming up with these other excuses and we're using our guns. And, I'm with you. I think people that do this, they deserve to spend the rest of their lives in jail. There's really no way to justify it, to say anything. I've been reading the reports on this, and it's just sad now that we have to be concerned about going into someone's wrong driveway. How many of us do that all the time? And now we have to be concerned about our lives being at risk because of that. And we do need tougher gun laws, no matter what anyone says. And we know we are the worst country when it comes to gun laws, but we definitely need to do something about this so we can stop hearing about these types of stories.
All right, folks, an Ohio pastor who was criminally charged for allowing unhoused people to sleep at his church has filed a federal lawsuit on the grounds of religious discrimination. In 2023, the pastor of Dad's Place in Bryan, Ohio, Chris Avell, began offering temporary housing for people living on the street. The city ordered the church to stop, citing zoning and safety concerns. But Avell refused, and now he faces 18 zoning code violations, which are punishable by fines up to 6 months in prison or both. The lawsuit maintains that the church is providing food and shelter to those in need, a religious activity that the city and its top officials have jeopardized under the guise of zoning laws. DeWanna, Reverend Jamal Bryant at New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Atlanta announced that they are assisting him, paying his legal bills, and fighting this. A lot of folks across the country have risen to this pastor's defense, saying, how dare you go after a church for trying to help the homeless?
Yeah, I'm a preacher's kid, so, this one hit really home to me. That's what the church is set up for. I mean, the church is set up to help those who are in need. This is an individual who obviously, it seems like, from everything I've read, this is the passion of his heart. He wants to help. It sounds like he's tried to do some things. It seems like they're kind of pitting things against him. I mean, I don't know how you go against a pastor who wants to help homeless. Obviously, he's doing a city, a service by helping and bringing people off the street and helping them to create better lives. I think this is just absolutely crazy that we are treating an individual who is wanting to do what he believes that God is telling him to do, or that he's following his Bible and he's really putting himself out there to help in someone who is needing that help. It's absolutely crazy that we would be trying to shut this individual down. So I applaud the efforts of everyone who is trying to come to this pastor's defense and hope that he's able to get things fixed so that he can continue to help people. I mean, that's what pastors are here for. They want to be a help to people in their time of need, to hope to give them better lives. And it sounds like this is what this individual is doing.
Absolutely. All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. Let me thank Tarlov for joining us. He had to leave to catch his flight, so we appreciate it. All right, folks, going to a break. We come back. We're going to talk about the presidential election, New Hampshire. Trump wins, Biden wins. Now on to the next states, and is really shaping up to be a repeat of the 2020 election between those two. Folks, you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network. Support us in what we do. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans, folks, contributing on average $50 each. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day to our Bring the Funk fan club. What this does is allows us to raise $1 million to go. Of course, we're still going after advertising dollars, but that's not easy because many of these companies and agencies are not trying to spend with black-owned media. So your support is critical to what we do. So please do me a favor by joining our Bring the Funk fan club. Send your check and money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash out, $RM Unfiltered. Of course, the PayPal R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
We just have one of the oldest cultures that's desperately needed for mutual salvation. That's the consciousness. We have the keys in our roots to save mankind. We get to see the condition of other countries, other oceans, other cultures. And if we believe in God, a lot of us do, He's telling us if you don't get rid of that stuff that makes somebody superior, or inferior and work together for the mutual salvation, everybody's gone.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, nurses are the backbone of the healthcare industry, and yet only 7% of them are Black. What's the reason for that low number? Well, a lack of opportunities and growth in their profession. Joining us on the next Get Wealthy is Needy Bartonelli. She's going to be sharing exactly what nurses need to do and what approach they need to take ownership of their success.
So the Black Nurse Collaborative really spawned from a place and a desire to create opportunities to uplift each other, those of us in the profession, to also look and reach back and create pipelines and opportunities for other nurses like us.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
Next on The Frequency, we're talking about racism. My guest, Danica Moore, comes on to discuss her fight against racism that she and her daughter face.
The thing about racism, you can't outrun it, you can't control it, you can't predict when it's going to happen to you or your seed.
She's also going to give us solutions on how to handle the situation. That's here on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hello, I'm Paula J. Parker. Truly proud on the Proud Family.
I am Tommy Davidson. I play Oscar on Proud Family, Louder and Proud.
Hi, I'm Jo Marie Payton, voice of Sugar Mama on Disney's Louder and Prouder, Disney Plus. And I'm with Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
All right, folks, so we hear a lot of crazy stuff all the time. A lot of nutty stuff that comes out of Fox News. That this is all you can do, just go. They so stupid. So I want y'all to listen to this idiotic comment that Charles Payne made on Fox. And I've been on Charles' show. Charles is a nice guy. In fact, he's probably the only Fox News person there who ain't scared of me, because the rest of them scared of Booker Brother. But y'all, he was talking with Jessica Tarlov, progressive commentator, and this whole conversation just gave me a headache. Listen to this.
That are voting for Nikki Haley, that some of them have voted for Ron DeSantis, who maybe is more in his lane. But the Nikki Haley voter, are they going to try to get them, do you think?
Well, I'm certainly not an advisor to the Trump campaign, but it is, we talk in the millions of votes when we're talking about the general election, but it actually comes down to the tens of thousands, right? The margins in Georgia, in Arizona, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, it's minute. Right. It can be the difference between whether you came out and you criticized your opponent's dress, which some could interpret as demeaning a woman, again, which is obviously something that he suffers from, or just making a little offhanded comment that someone says, you know what, I'm going to sit home, or actually, I want 4 more years of Joe Biden. So yes, it would be smart, as it always was when he was president, if he would listen to Kayleigh about this. But he has an uncontrollable narcissism and rage about him when he feels insulted. And it's appealing to the base. That we love it. He's a counterpuncher. But you've now lost a general election. You've presided over the loss of the Republican Senate, the Republican House. The abortion has been on the ballot 7 times. Democrats have swept it in all of that, and he has not moderated at all. And frankly, I don't think it's in him for him to be able to do it for more than 20 minutes.
You know, Charles, you talked about the issues here and how immigration here is at the top, but it also is an economic issue, and it crosses all boundaries. And it is a weakness for President Biden and the Democrats. Dean Phillips talks about this on the trail, and he talks about how Democrats demean MAGA voters. He talked about it with me today, saying that, you know, it's just strange that they're talking about a group of voters like that.
Yeah, and I don't think it's narcissism. I think if it's, you've lived in New York long enough, you know it's maybe a New York thing. Someone punches you, you punch him back harder. That's why I grew up in Harlem.
Not if the country's at stake, right?
He won. He became president of the United States with that same personality. I don't think that, you know, listen, I think it's worse with Biden calling MAGA. Biden's anger and vitriol and hatred for MAGA is far more worse than President Trump's individual battles with someone who crosses him. That is something that is really detrimental to this country, that the President of the United States despises half of the United States. President Biden, I said earlier today, about a week ago, I had a segment coming up, so I Googled, Biden hates MAGA. Nothing but articles after articles after articles. He has expressed hatred for half of the country.
Who's writing those articles?
It doesn't matter. Look
and it's
at
not.
him. Because the bottom line is he says it. He has vitriol for them. And so does MSNBC, and so does CNN, and so does the New York Times. They have vitriol for half of the nation. They don't look at them like fellow Americans, and it's unfortunate. They try to paint them as racist. That all the things that they do to their fellow Americans who simply want a safe home, a safe community, for their children to have prosperity. They want the same thing, but they demean them all the time. That's why I think Phillips was so intriguing, because he went to a rally to find out for himself. And guess what? Golly, these are some pretty cool people. They're just like us.
Exactly what Jamie Dimon said this week as well.
Yeah.
And it's smart to understand. And also you see the shift that's happening, right? You look at black voters, Hispanic voters, college women, Latinos who have moved towards Trump.
Yes.
So it's no longer that people are in these boxes based on what their gender is or what they look like. They appear to want, you know, a safe country, and they appear to want a good economy, regardless of what label they have.
That's completely fine, and I know that the lines have shifted dramatically, but Joe Biden's responsible for a lot of that. You say that he's demeaned half the country. First of all, it's 74 million people that voted for Donald Trump, and he is explicit every time he talks about the MAGA movement to say that this is a subsection of the Republican Party, which is borne out in elections when you see people voting against Donald Trump. And this idea that
but what about the people
way
voting
that Democrats,
for him? What about the people voting for him? He gives teleprompter speeches. I mean, you have to understand.
Yes, but he is talking about insurrectionists. No. Yes, he is. No. Why is he talking about January 6th? And he calls...
He says MAGA like it's a swear word, you know, instead of a slogan.
If you get called regularly,
he's the
which
president of the
Democrats
United
do,
States.
thugs,
he's the commander-in-chief.
pedophiles,
Why can't he call the border a crisis while he's denigrating and castigating Americans? No, the voters are talking about that, Jessica.
But
excuse me, respectfully,
demeaning voters.
The president of the United States, the commander-in-chief, went to Philadelphia a year and a half ago with a Marine posted behind him.
I saw.
And gave a decidedly political speech where he insulted a large part of the country. And I've said many times on this network, and I'll say it again tonight, if people, a lot of people, spend a fraction of the time that they spend obsessing over Donald Trump the person, learning one thing about the Trump voter, things may be very different. This is Joe Biden's version of Hillary's deplorable and irredeemable.
And here's one thing. We're going to be talking about this for many months. So we have to move on.
I'm excited.
Okay, so allow me to unpack the sheer nonsense that you just heard. You saw Charles Payne just visibly upset. Charles, do you even watch your own network? He criticized Biden. He criticized MSNBC. He criticized CNN. Well, they're sitting here, they're talking about half the country. What the hell do you think y'all do every single day? Literally, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham. We could go on and on. All your shows, Jesse Waters, The Five, Greg Gutfeld, y'all consistently are trashing liberals, trashing progressives. You've got folks on the right trying to say folks on the left are baby killers, they are pedophiles. You got the whole crazy Pizzagate stuff going on. You got Donald Trump, who is perfectly fine supporting neo-Nazis, fascists, white supremacists, had them on the payroll, Stephen Miller, had other individuals who are aligned with neo-Nazis. Then you have, in the Charles Payne, they're calling people racist. Charles, suck it up. There are racists in the Republican Party. There are racist people who support Donald Trump. Donald Trump has hired racist people. I'm sorry, he had lunch with a racist along with Kanye West at Mar-a-Lago. But this whole victimhood of, oh my God, Joe Biden criticizes us, and if he would only understand the Trump voter. He doesn't need to. He doesn't need to, because we understand the Trump voter very well. And yes, there are Republicans out there who are all about power. There are Republicans out there who believe in smaller government, who believe in tax cuts, who believe in those things. But let's be real clear. We know who the base of the Republican Party is. We know who the hell showed up on January 6th. We know who was out there attacking cops and beating people. We know that that was driven by black people voting in Atlanta, Philadelphia, Milwaukee. Yep, those places. And Detroit. Yep, those were the places. How do we know that? Because Trump named them. And so, Charles, that is who y'all are. And see, what the Jamie Dimons of the world don't like, and what the Charles Paynes of the world don't like, and you heard Martha McCallum and Brett Baird and all the rest of them up there talking all this back and forth. What they don't like is they don't like when the bigots are all grouped together. Go, you're supporting the same person. Yes, you are. Those folks marching in Charlottesville with the tiki torches, yep, they're down with Trump. Stephen Miller, that white supremacist, yep, absolutely. Who do you work for? Trump. See, but what they do is they love playing the victim. Oh, now they love saying Democrats and black people, y'all love playing the victim. Yeah, the biggest group that's just enamored with victimhood are folks on the right. Because no one understands us. No one listens to us. No one feels us. We're losing our America. We're losing our way of life because they cannot handle the fact that America is changing and it's becoming browner. What was the central location for the Great Replacement Theory? Tucker Carlson and Fox News. What place is constantly talking about, oh my goodness, how they're taking our country? Fox News, Salem Broadcasting, conservative radio, conservative digital websites. Yeah, that's what it is. See, what they can't stand is they actually can't stand that President Biden's calling them out. If he wouldn't do this, really? We watched for 4 years Donald Trump demean, degrade, attack people. We saw that man lead a birther movement. Yeah, we saw it with our own eyes. And y'all want us to feel sorry for y'all because your feelings are hurt. And what y'all want us to do is to sit down and listen to you, listen to your frustration, listen to how you think your country is being changed and how things are not what they used to be. So you want us to lend you a shoulder to cry on, lend you a body to lean on. You want us to pray with them and eat with them and just understand their feelings and just understand. And you hear Charles, I mean, these people they want the communities to be safe and they want that. Dude, stop it. Or Charles Payne And all those folks on Fox News, what they cannot stand is the truth. They cannot stand that the Republican Party is filled with a bunch of crazy, deranged, out of control, racist, sexist, MAGA folk. They can't handle it. They can't handle the fact that Biden and Harris is willing to call them out. See, they went off like crazy. Hillary Clinton called the deplorables. But they are. Their actions have proven it. But they want us to embrace them. 2 words. No, 3. Hail to the no. 2 more words. Absolutely not. Because we have seen the damage that these people want to cause. We've witnessed it with our own eyes. And so, Charles, Brett, Martha, the whole panel, if y'all are upset with Jessica, you're upset with me and others, get your own house in order. Get your own crazy, deranged people in line, or you wouldn't be called out. But until then, I'm with Biden. Call them out at every single turn. Because a line in the sand has been drawn. And you are either with democracy, with this country, or you are with that narcissistic, uncontrollable, deranged, sick, evil man known as Donald Trump. And I will never back off calling him exactly who he is. And Rebecca, Biden is doing exactly what he should be doing, calling these people exactly who they are.
Roland, a hit dog holler. Like, these people are upset because they understand that right now the term MAGA isn't very popular, and people understand what the MAGA movement is. But these are the same people who call themselves MAGA. These are the same people who supported a racist president or racist policies. These are the same people who are now trying to justify, well, it's okay to support a racist president or racist policies. It doesn't mean that I'm racist, but guess what? It means that you support racist and racist policies. So at that point, what's the difference? The other thing is they're also trying to gaslight us and distract us, because we all know about Project 2025. We know what will come in a second Trump administration, and they don't want to talk about that. Instead, they want to say, hey, Joe Biden, be nicer as you fight against Trump. Why? You know, it simply doesn't make sense. So then Kellyanne Conway, like, where did she come from? I mean, it was glorious to not have to deal with her over the last few years, and now she pops up. Everyone in Trump world, I mean, it's beyond a circus. It's beyond horrible or deplorable, but it's actually devastating to this country, with especially knowing what the plans are for a second Trump administration. This is not about Democrat. This is not about Republican. This is about, what do you see the future of this country as, and where do you see yourself in the future of this country? And then finally, like, Charles, I don't even understand. It was so weird. Like, you might have seen my face watching him just turn up real fast about MAGA. And he's like, oh, well, you know, I grew up in Harlem, but it's really, dude. Like, you know, none of this is making sense. It's very bizarre. But finally, that Vox panel showed that they're not willing to actually talk about the policy issues that distinguishes Trump from Biden. Instead, they have to go to, oh, Biden is hurting people's feelings. He's hurting half of the country. He's not hurting half of the country. He's hurting maybe 35% of the country that said that, you know, hell or high water, they're going to support Trump and his racist policies. Well, guess what? Like I said earlier, if you want to be racist or you want to support a racist and racist policies, good luck. As far as me and the rest of the folks, we're not here for it in 2024.
Duana?
Yeah, these things are always hard to watch between probably my rocking and shaking as I'm watching everything here and not really. I say that it's hard to believe that these things are going on. And I have to ask myself every day, is this the world that we're living in where people are actually justifying the actions of individuals, but not only that, justifying the actions of an individual who's got, more charges against him than the law should even allow, and that we're putting this person on a pedestal to say that this is the person that they're out here supporting. Everything that comes out of his mouth and those who support them is detrimental to what democracy, in my mind, should look like. And I think that everyone should be concerned. Watching an individual not talk about, especially the panel here, the Fox News channel, they weren't talking anything that had to do with policy or what's going on. It was everything about feelings. Well, I have a hard time understanding individuals who thinks it's okay to erase our history. I have a hard time understanding individuals who don't even want to talk about the past. And I have a hard time understanding individuals who are trying to really erase people who look like you and I. So I have a hard time feeling like, and I'm a Christian woman here, so I get with, getting along with people and having these conversations, but I have a hard time struggling with individuals who are speaking a rhetoric that is really not trying to take any ownership in the things that have gone on and to really excuse an individual and applaud him and say these things are okay. Do we remember what happened at the Capitol when we had those people going in there and storming that place? Like, we're acting like these things didn't happen. And my problem with this party is they don't want to talk about it, but they want us to talk about how they're feeling. They want to get on President Biden for calling them out. Rightfully so. Wrong is wrong, as right is right. And what is happening right now is not right here in America. And it's not the America that, that I hope to see for my future generations. And so we have a big problem. Those Fox News is always hard to watch because they really are not talking about the issues at hand. They're just coming up, with more excuses, and they're backing an individual who is not for people in this country.
All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. We come back. We'll talk what happened last night in New Hampshire. Also, why won't Republicans deal with the immigration issue, deal with the border? Could it be Trump is telling them not to? Lots to talk about with Michael Singleton, Republican strategist, next. Roland Martin Unfiltered, right here on the Black Star Network.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we're going to be talking about common sense. We think that people have it, know how to use it, but it is something that people often have to learn. The truth is, most of us are not born with it, and we need to teach common sense, embrace it, and give it to those who need it most, our kids.
So I always tell teachers to listen out to what conversations the students are having about what they're getting from social media, and then let's get ahead of it and have the appropriate conversations with them.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
Next on The Frequency, we're talking about racism. My guest, Danica Moore, comes on to discuss her fight against racism that she and her daughter face.
The thing about racism, you can't outrun it, you can't control it, you can't predict when it's going to happen to you or your seed.
She's also going to give us solutions on how to handle the situation. That's here on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
I am Tommy Davidson. I play Oscar on Proud Family, Louder and Prouder.
Right now, I'm rolling with Roland Martin, unfiltered, uncut, unplugged, and undamn believable. You hear me?
Folks, last night, New Hampshire, Donald Trump won that primary, besting Nikki Haley by more than 10 points, some 30,000 votes. Also on the Democratic side, President Biden, he was not on the ballot, but his name was written in. He got 73% of the vote, a higher vote total than President Barack Obama got in 2012 when he was on the ballot. So they move on. Basically, this race is shaping up to be, as we long expected, a rematch of 2020 between President Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Nikki Haley, she's desperately trying to stay in the race, but the question is, can she even have enough money to get to South Carolina in 30 days? Shermichael Singleton, Republican strategist. He joins us right now. Shermichael, glad to have you on the show. When you start looking at the numbers, Shermichael, it's going to be a huge problem for Donald Trump holding on to these moderate voters. And sure, he's got his MAGA base, but his base ain't big enough to hand him the presidency. He's going to have to appeal to crossover voters, and he's not doing well with those folks.
I mean, so when you look at the numbers, you're looking at about 67 to 68% of independent voters nationally who are saying they absolutely will not vote for President Trump. So then that gives you about 30% within a margin of error. You divide that up, and then you see around 12 to 15% who say that they're open to voting for Trump. When you do the math on that, remember in 2016, Donald Trump won the Electoral College by a very slim margin. Fast forward rather to 2020, President Biden won the presidency by a small electoral college victory across 4 states, around 84,000 votes. And so when you start to break down the math, you start looking, well, what states did Donald Trump win in 2016, lost in 2020, where that 12 to 15% of independents who are open to voting for him could make a marginal difference. You look at a state like Georgia. I'm looking at a state like Arizona. I'm looking at potentially a state like Pennsylvania, maybe even Michigan, where President Biden is having some struggles. So there is a possible path, Roland, when you start looking at the math.
Well, speaking of math, I mean, Trump won by 77,000 votes in those critical states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. You look at the exact same 3 states, Biden won by a much, much larger margin in those particular states. And again, he also, of course, won Nevada, won Arizona, and won Georgia as well. But again, what you're seeing, though, is it's not like I love it how some of these Republicans, Ben Carson and others, they were like, well, if you saw the speech last night, you know, I think you're seeing a different tone, Donald Trump. And then all you got to do is just wait 24 hours because it's going to be some craziness said on Truth Social. It's going to be another crazy speech that he gives. And so I think as we're moving towards it, at the end of the day, people are going to be stuck with, all right, I'm hearing this man say a bunch of crazy, deranged stuff constantly. Do I want that chaos back in the White House?
I mean, the vulnerabilities are present, right? Like, you cannot deny the vulnerabilities, which is why I think whomever the former president chooses as his running mate is going to be critically important. I mean, you need someone that signals a level of stability that he doesn't particularly bring. You need someone who's also attractive to some of those voters.
That ain't going to have no bearing. Whoever's the vice president, same on Democratic side, it ain't going to mean nothing. Folk voting for the president.
People, let me respond to that. People love to say that, but there's significant data from Harvard, from MIT, from UCLA that actually showcases otherwise. I mean, having been a practitioner of electoral politics, you see people say, well, conventional wisdom says this. That's great and all, but I'm a data guy. The numbers indicate otherwise. There's a reason President Biden chose Kamala Harris. There's a reason former President Obama chose Joe Biden. There's a reason former president chose Mike Pence. Those things actually do signal certain things to certain groups, Roland, and I don't think you can factor those things out, particularly when you're looking at how can a president or a candidate for the presidency win electoral college states. We talk about popular vote and winning by 3+ million, and that's great and all. But how are both of these candidates performing currently in the states that are most critical? And when you look at the numbers present, President Biden does have some vulnerabilities, and you cannot deny those things. And this isn't to say that it's guaranteed for Donald Trump. They're simply saying, looking at the math, this could, surprise a lot of people. It's going to be very close.
No, look, it's going to be close. But again, though, the key is this: if you're Trump, he has to get independent and moderate voters.
Yeah,
He's got no choice.
I agree.
He ain't getting liberal progressive votes. For Biden, what he has to be concerned about, his base actually showing up, especially young voters. And so this is where the whole Israel-Gaza issue comes up. I do want to ask you this here. So this actually came out today. Senator Mitch McConnell, in his Republican conference, said to them that there will be no border deal because Donald Trump is stopping them from doing this because he wants to campaign on it. This is literally Senator Mitch McConnell being on the record. Guys, pull the tweet up. Okay, this is Senator Mitch McConnell being on the record. Jake Sherman reports that in the Republican conference that's what Mitch McConnell had to say. So if I'm Biden and Democrats, my deal for between now and November is like, shut the hell up. We can get a deal done, but your guy doesn't actually want to do one because he wants it to be his campaign issue. If I'm a Democrats, I'm beating the Republicans upside. Every time Republicans say, go to the border, I'm going to say, call your boy because he won't let y'all do a real deal.
I mean, look, I got to be, candor would oblige me to be quite frank on this issue. I think Republicans have done a good job on the immigration issue and how they've crafted that message. For Republicans, this is an election year. There isn't really a reason, Roland, if I'm being honest here, let's take away the legislative process here, the fact that they should have some bipartisanship. I would certainly agree with that. But we're in the middle of a very critical campaign. And so, of course, a particular side is going to look at an issue through the lens of electoral politics. Does this yield an advantage to me? And if it does yield an advantage to me, is it necessarily in my interest to move forward on this electorally? Is it in my interest to have bipartisanship on this particular issue?
Here's why. Here's why.
No,
because here's why. Because Republicans can't yell, fix the border, fix the border, fix the border, do something about the border, when there's a bipartisan proposal on the table, but they won't move on it because they want to campaign on it. And that's what I'm saying. If I'm Democrats, what?
Well, so I'll tell you why I disagree. I mean, you look at most recent polling, immigration is the #1 issue. It's now usurped the economy. You look at major Democratic strongholds from California to Colorado to even New York Mayor Eric Adams, who recently said the White House doesn't appear to be interested in this issue. It's costing his city, for example, $8 million per day, $4.7 billion by this summer, causing a budget deficit for the city. And so, again, Roland, now you have Democratic mayors saying, wait a minute here, this is a serious problem. We can get into the machinations of Greg Abbott sending immigrants to certain places. That's certainly a part of it. But my point is, this is now affecting places where it's going to become a problem, I would argue, for the president.
But here's my point. My point is, Democrats can say, we're ready. You can't whine and complain every single day about the problem when we want to fix the problem. And there are Republicans who want to fix it, but your dear leader,
but Roland, they're not saying that.
Do it.
I agree 100% with you in that message. If I were advising Democrats, I would say,
Shermichael.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on, Shermichael. I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to read it to you. Jake Sherman tweeted this today. I'm going to actually read it to you. Give me one second. Actually, this came from, he posted from Breast Report's Punchbowl News. Senator Mitch McConnell told a closed meeting of Senate Republicans Wednesday that the politics on the border has flipped for Republicans and cast doubt on linking Ukraine and the border. When we started this, the border united us, Ukraine divided us. The politics on this have changed, McConnell then told his GOP colleagues. This is all about Trump. McConnell referred to Trump as the nominee and noted the former president wants to run his 2024 campaign centered on immigration, and the GOP leader said, we don't want to do anything to undermine him. Quote, we're in a quandary, McConnell added. Again, if I'm Democrats, I'm saying immediately we are ready to pass comprehensive immigration reform, border security, but Republicans don't want to do anything. They want to allow this to continue every day for the next 9 months because their dear leader said, don't fix the problem because I want to campaign on it. If I'm Democrats, I'm turning it on the head every day.
No, Roland, I don't disagree with you. I've worked on campaigns across the country. I understand messaging very well. I'm not taking a particular side one way or the other, but what I'm doing is analyzing why Donald Trump does not want to cede this and is telling Republicans don't solve it.
Here's my whole point. I understand why he wants to do it. But the point I'm making, sure, Michael, from this point forward, no Republican can whine and complain about the border if they are a member of the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate when there is a deal on the table that they don't want to take up.
I understand the premise. I understand the premise of your claim. What I'm saying, however, is that the president and the White House is disadvantaged on this particular issue. And what you're saying, they're not saying. If they were saying it, then the numbers would look differently on this issue, and that's not the case.
Well, first of all, they're not saying it because McConnell.
So they should call you, Roland. The White House should call you because I don't disagree with anything you said.
They ain't got to call me. All they got to do is just watch the show and then go do what we tell them to do. That's what they should do. I want to bring in DeWanna and Rebecca on this. Rebecca, I want to go to you first. Again, this here on the immigration issue, the fact that McConnell is now on the record as saying we can't do anything on this because Trump won't let us because he wants to run on it. Democrats should be pouncing on this right now.
Well, Roland, two things. This has been going on since 2005, 2006, 2007, when John McCain and Teddy Kennedy actually introduced a compromise bill on comprehensive immigration reform. And I would say, it has been to the Republicans' advantage to actually deal with this issue because it's now become a voter issue. But I'll also push back on the Democrats as well. When the Democrats had control of the House and of the Senate, they should have resurrected this bill and actually tried to get it passed, especially because they had strong bipartisan support. And it was years of work that Teddy Kennedy and John McCain did that actually had a great starting point. We would have been much further along than where we're at now. But the second thing that I want to talk about in relation to New Hampshire last night, just looking at the exiting polls, sure, Michael is right. Immigration was one of the top key issues that Republicans who voted for Trump voted on, but also 85% of them that supported Trump said that Biden did not win the election. So even if immigration is the number one issue in the country right now, the folks who Trump is appealing to are the people who don't think that Biden won, and also the people who overwhelmingly in the 80s, in the 80 percentile, who believe that abortion should be illegal in this country. That's completely opposite of the majority of the country. So I guess my question or my point is, even if Trump gets out of this Republican primary, which he probably will, his message is so egregious and so extreme. I don't see how he's able to get the middle to support him to actually win in November. And that's not me saying that Joe Biden is doing a good job campaigning, but it's me saying Trump's message, I don't see how he's able to pivot in the general election.
Sure, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know if I'm convinced necessarily that the president needs a substantial margins of swing voters to win. Again, I go back to 2016. I've studied the numbers. If President Biden, to the point that you raised, Roland, in terms of some of the issues, younger voters, African Americans, even like Latino voters, which now appear to be shifting more so to Trump's corner on the immigration issue, I believe 58%, the latest poll I just saw about a week or two ago. If there is any deficit in turnout in critical battleground states for President Biden, Donald Trump can win. I'm not saying that he will win, but I'm just looking at the numbers here. You're talking about 84,000 votes across 4 states. Those numbers are not insurmountable, and I just have to be realistic with the viewers about this. Again, I'm not saying he's going to win, but if he were to win, I'm just telling people don't be surprised based on how he won in 2016 and how he lost in 2020.
Well, the thing here is that, and this is where Cornel Belcher even had a column today in the LA Times on this. Here's why I spend literally no time on the show on polls. One, they're snapshots. Two, it's a joke for me to deal with polling in January, election in November. The question then becomes, as we move in the next 6-7 months, how does this thing begin to shape up? And then when it really comes down to two candidates, and that's really, I think, what jumps out. You're also seeing Biden shifting several of his top White House aides over to the campaign because now they're getting serious about the campaign, which they should have been, which frankly, as I believe, they should have been doing 6 months ago, because I believe the campaign should have been a lot more aggressive beginning in May and June of 2023 instead of waiting until January 2024. Dewana, you got a question?
Yeah, I just, after kind of seeing the things that happened in New Hampshire, and I'm just seeing that Nikki Haley continue to pursue things and continue with this race, what is going to need to be done when I'm looking at the fact that there seems to be some sort of split, and the poll numbers, I don't get off into all of them. That's not my expertise area, but it seems that as I've been watching the news and watching things, that there are, in New Hampshire, it seemed like there were these independents that were coming up and trying to get, some things moving, with Nikki Haley still being in this race. And we know Donald Trump is going to be the one that's going to be picked in the end. But the longer she's in this race, does this start to hurt the Republican Party, divide the Republican Party? I feel like it does the Democrats advantageous, during this time while this is continuing. But what do you foresee that looking like if this continues to be, Nikki Haley continues to pursue this with Donald Trump?
Yeah, that it's something that you said towards the end. I want to put emphasis on. You said it's advantageous to Democrats. I do not disagree at all. I mean, what we saw in New Hampshire, even in Iowa, is that there is clearly some splits and cracks within the Republican coalition as it pertains to Donald Trump. So nationally, moderate-leaning Republicans represent around 27 to 30% of all registered Republicans in the country. Most of them did not vote for Donald Trump in 2020. And what you saw in New Hampshire, most of them said if it was not for Nikki Haley, they were Republicans. Some of them voted for Trump the first time. You even had some that said they voted for him twice, but said they would not vote for him this time around. That's a very real problem for the former president. Now, for the former Governor Haley, I don't think she has a path, but I think she's probably waiting to see what happens February 8th from the Supreme Court. How do they rule on the very serious question about former President Trump being on the ballot in Colorado, Maine? There are several other states that are kind of contemplating following Colorado's orders. Or will the Supreme Court seek to find some type of legal justification to say he should be on the ballot and voters should ultimately make that determination? But with that said, if I'm advising Nikki Haley and I'm looking forward to 2028, Donald Trump is ahead by 50-plus points in South Carolina. The governor has endorsed him. Both U.S. senators have endorsed him. Most of the members on the Republican congressional delegation have endorsed him. Several key evangelical pastors have endorsed him. Then you fast forward to Super Tuesday, which is March 5th. Most of the states now are either winner take all or winner take most. This is in part because of the savviness of Trump's operation a year or two ago when they crisscrossed the country, in part because of help from individuals like Kevin McCarthy in California. Louisiana, for example, is a state now where the delegates have to stay with the person who won that state, at least for 2 ballots, if there were a challenge come convention. And so Donald Trump's team, they're really built a robust operation compared to 2016, where now all of the rules in terms of delegate apportionment to get to 12-15 to become the Republican nominee are all slated to his benefit. So even if Nikki Haley had some type of a path, she would always be playing numerical catch-up to Donald Trump.
First of all, she ain't catching up. All right, so let me do this here. So, I mean, look, she ain't got no shot, and we'll see if her money is able to keep her in the game for the next 30 days. At the end of the day,
Roland, from my understanding, just real quick, from my understanding, just talking to a couple of folks, some of the donors, some of the wealthier mega donors are starting to look at this and starting to ask and beg the question, what is the path here? And so I predict, I may be wrong, but I'm almost certain in about 2 weeks, 3 at the most, I think she's going to drop out. It's a money thing. You just don't have the money to sustain the candidacy.
I think what will happen is, look, you've got Nevada coming up. You've got U.S. Virgin Islands. She's taking a trip to the U.S. Virgin Islands. I think what happens is, to be frank, South Carolina is her last stand. And so I think she stays in until then. Or if she doesn't want to risk the embarrassment of getting crushed and blown out in her home state. But at the end of the day, South Carolina is the end of the road for her. Let me go to a quick
Roland,
break.
she gains nothing.
Hold on.
Okay.
No. I understand that other than ego. Hold tight 1 second. We come back. We want to talk about the United Auto Workers, their endorsement of President Joe Biden. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Farquhar, executive producer of Proud Family.
Bruce Smith, creator and executive producer of The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Rarely, as a union, do you get so clear of a choice between two candidates. In 2019, and I want you guys to pay attention to these two slides we're about to show you. In 2019, our members were out there holding the line at GM on a national strike for 40 days. Trump was the sitting president. And I want to show you a picture of what Trump said and what actions he took to help the American auto workers striking at GM when he was president. He said nothing, he did nothing, not a damn thing, because he doesn't care about the American worker.
United Auto Workers today endorsing President Joe Biden in this election. Shermichael Singleton, the Republican strategist. Shermichael, Trump loves talking about how he's for the American worker, for these men and women, largely white in hard hats. The UAW is like, yeah, dude, where were you?
Yeah, look, I'm not surprised by the endorsement, but I mean, it was a great endorsement for President Biden. No one can deny that. I mean, you know, Joe Biden always talks about, you know, Scranton Joe, a blue collar guy. He talks a lot about his father, who was a manual physical labor worker. That connects with a lot of people, Roland. I mean, look, the reality is when you think about the continuing divide between winners and losers, a lot of blue-collar people don't feel a sense of respect. They don't feel a sense of recognition or gratitude for the hard work that they labor on every day, sometimes 40, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, so that these so-called technocratic elites, or as Harvard philosopher and professor Michael Sandel refers to as meritocratic hubris. And so this endorsement for President Biden shouldn't be overlooked. And I think that Joe Biden's past and being able to speak directly to the everyday lives of those workers is a very real thing. And it's a mobilizing message.
Not only a mobilizing message, it also will speak volumes in terms of boots on the ground in states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, even if you go down further, Indiana. So the question would be again what the impact is. Rebecca, your thoughts on this endorsement of these auto workers? Remember, when Trump ran 2016, he talked about how he was going to be fighting for the auto workers, but he also complained about the bailout, which actually saved their jobs.
So from a pure political stance, look, this frees up resources in the primary to go into the Biden-Harris coffers, and then it allows for those same resources to then actually flow into the general election coffers as well. But the same pushback that I gave when Lee Saunders was on the show is, what does it look like for the rank and file? While money is moving in that endorsement with some boots on the ground, benefits Biden's campaign, what does it look like when it's time to go into the ballot booth? Are those rank and file members of unions, especially with building trades, obviously not UAW, are they going to support Trump or are they going to support Biden? And we've seen, in 2020, but also in 2016, we saw some of those rank and file union members actually supporting Trump.
Dewana.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. It's going to, we're going to see what happens with this endorsement, if that will trickle down to others. But I think, this is a great thing for President Biden. I mean, look, in September, he became the first sitting U.S. president to join the active UAW picket line, rallying alongside of those. And I when I hear this, I'm just kind of reminded by Maya Angelou's quote that just talks about people may forget about what you do, but they remember how you made them feel. And so I think because of some of the things that President Biden has done, that got him this endorsement, but hopefully others will follow suit as well and give him their support.
Mr. Michael, final comment.
I mean, look, Roland, I'm reminded of an argument that great German philosopher Hegel made, which is that all people seek recognition. And while President Biden hasn't really talked about this as much, I mean, he's obviously focusing on governing the country and other things. I mean, this is something that I think is a strong suit of his. And again, that is that connectiveness to everyday regular people. There is this sense that I would argue when you think about things in terms of contemporary politics or civil society, where people believe that their status in life isn't what it once was. The Pew Research has some very fascinating data that came out that showcased most Americans believe that things were better off in the past than in the present. The future is bleak, according to most people. I just saw another poll that came out. 62% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. We're seeing an increase in Americans relying on credit cards. We're seeing an increase in Americans relying on buy now, pay later loans. And so, look, we can argue politically, policy-wise, which party has better addressed those issues, but that's not the point that I'm necessarily making. The point that I'm making is that I think it's going to be fascinating to watch how the president speaks to those issues, because I do think people are yearning for that. Not just white blue-collar workers, but I think a sort of multiracial movement. You think about Trump in terms of MAGA and populism. It'll be fascinating to see if President Biden can pull together this multiracial coalition that he did in 2020 to help get him across the finish line this November.
Well, I'll tell you this here. When you look at many of these particular polls, this whole notion of a yearning for days past, they ain't black folks. They ain't black.
No, I don't.
This really is a. No. Here's what I mean.
What I'm going to say, Roland, just real quickly.
I go back.
By that phrase, I'm not talking about it in terms of a racial past. I mean, obviously, I'll see the point that it's certainly some who would like to go back to a racial dominance. But what I'm saying is that in terms of this particular labor union, most of their members are white. They're not majority black. And so what I'm saying is 30 years ago, the idea that people could buy a home and afford it, they could retire and be comfortable, they could put their kids through college if their child so sought to go in that direction, was a more realistic possibility for those types of workers than it is today. That's the point that I'm making.
Yeah, but that's also why what has to happen is there has to be actual conversations on these mainstream white networks about actual policies and what people are talking about. I alluded to this earlier. Cordell Belcher Democratic pollster, published an op-ed today in the Los Angeles Times where he talked about polling. He said over the last several election cycles, polling has increasingly become a central focus of media reporting on campaigns, particularly presidential contests, and that's unfortunate. Average voters should rarely see or hear about polling because it's not particularly relevant or actionable for them. He then said, guys, can we pull it up, please? He then said, in many ways, however, polling is driving political media narratives. Polling is no longer a part of a news story. It is the news story. The trouble is that horse race numbers can drive almost any narrative that politicians or journalists find expedient, regardless of whether it's accurate. See the great red wave. Media frenzy of the 2020 midterm elections, which of course proved to be the opposite of the truth. The mainstream media's coverage of campaigns from such a standpoint is not only mistaken, but also irresponsible. And so here's the deal. I think what you just talked about is, I think Biden Harris want to have that conversation. But the question is, will you have these folks in media circles do that? We talk about policies on this show. When you talk about what you just laid out in terms of these workers, when it comes to the issue of being able to send their kids to school, I think if you're Biden Harris, they're like, bring that conversation on, because you've got Trump and Republicans who oppose student loan debt relief. Then when we examine what has happened, a massive increase in tuition all across this country. I think when you talk about what's happening with home ownership crisis, absolutely, that is an issue because this country is actually behind in the number of homes we built over the past 13 years, the lowest number since the 1940s. But the question, though, is, and this is the problem, when you look at how these campaigns are covered, what they're focusing on, what these networks are focusing on, they're focusing on language, they're focusing on personality, they're focusing on he said, she said. They're not actually breaking down, okay, when it comes to it, where does Trump and Biden stand on housing? Where do they stand on college tuition? Where do they stand on student loan debt relief? And that, to me, I think is part of the problem we have in the society, that the type of coverage that we have is superficial, is process-oriented, is inside baseball, but it's really not about the issues that people care about.
Well, can I comment, Roland? I mean, I think, to editorialize it, I don't disagree. I mean, I know Cornell Well is a very talented pollster. A lot of the data that I cited earlier at the beginning of our dialogue, I mean, on every campaign that I've been a part of, whether it's internal or external polling, to the point that you made, it is a snapshot in time. And that snapshot in time gives us on a campaign, the strategists, the advisors, an idea of where we currently stand with a certain sector of voters or voters writ large on a particular issue. Do we need to change some things? Is it a messaging issue? Are we not adopting the proper policy stance? And then you sort of internally make those movements, and then you wait and see what the new data showcases, the new focus groups information sort of directs you. And so I agree with him 100% in that regard. But I will say this, Roland. There is a serious deficit in this country in terms of civic education. I mean, you think about moral reasoning and deliberation in terms of politics. And I wouldn't necessarily lay the blame solely on the media. I would say the education system in general in this country has completely failed Americans in terms of how policy functions and governs, how members of Congress craft legislation, the actual role of the president that most people aren't aware of. So I don't disagree with anything you said.
Well, I agree. But first of all, I agree in terms of how education has failed. Rebecca, the problem that I still have fundamentally is that this is why I can't even watch these networks. And I'm just being straight up, Rebecca. I can't watch CNN. I can't watch MSNBC. I can't watch Fox News because what I see. Everything, the newest poll. No. What are they actually talking about? What are the actual issues? And to me, that is a massive failure. And if this election becomes a personality ageism question, like for instance, okay, we've had all of this discussion, Rebecca, about Biden's age. Totally get it. But what has he actually done? What has he done? Oh, he doesn't have as much vigor. What got passed? How's it benefit the American people? Again, give me a less than vigorous 80-plus-year-old person versus a 45 to 50-year-old person full of energy and vigor and who's going jogging, who can't get shit done.
Oh, Roland, the types of news articles and the types of storylines that you're talking about, from someone who has worked on campaigns for about 20 years all across this country, I see it as a sideshow. I see it as a distraction, because if you get folks following the shiny red ball that's bouncing around in the room, then folks aren't paying attention to the boogeyman that's in the corner. And so when you look at someone like Trump does not want us to talk about the things that he's planning to do in a second administration, right? So now those who are around him are, their storyline, their talking point of the day is, oh, well, Biden's old. He tripped over a cord. Therefore, he can't be a good president. Now, do I have issues with octogenarians running the country when that's not the average experience of people in this country? Yes, but that's a different story. But both Trump and Biden are still in the same age group. So regardless, we're going to have an old white guy who's going to be in the White House, come 2025. But that distracts from the issues of, hey, we got issues. Our economy is strong, but individual people aren't feeling the strong personal economy. That's something we need to talk about. Or even to Shermichael's point, there is an education issue in this country, and COVID made it even much worse. We have a lot of students who got passed on, like fourth graders now, were the COVID kindergartners. A lot of them are deficient in math and reading and don't have a strong understanding of science. That means as a country, we're not going to be competitive in the global market when it comes to our job force because students aren't getting proper education. So there's many other issues that we should be focused on. And yes, the border security, immigration, comprehensive immigration reform are also issues that need to be dealt with. But instead, we're focusing on like the shiny objects that really don't mean anything. And finally, from working on campaigns, if you think news outlets and their coverage of polling is nauseating, sitting around with a bunch of donors who think because you give them top lines in a polling memo that all of a sudden they have the inside track of knowing which neighborhoods we should go knock doors on. So it's a lot of people, and maybe we could blame Nate Silver for trying to make people feel like anyone can read polling data. That's not true. That's why you actually have political scientists, because there's actually a science in it. But now everyone thinks it's accessible because they could go to a website and they can see 5 different top lines in polling. And I know the majority of your audience probably have no idea of what I'm talking about when I'm saying top lines, but I'm a political scientist, so I know what I'm talking about, which is why I understand in a presidential year, I'm not seriously looking at polling until about mid-September, because at that point, we're about maybe 10 days before we start having some early voting in earnest, and that's giving me a true account of what's going on. But polling from a practitioner's point of view, it allows me to see, okay, this is how women are feeling this week. Okay, in 2 weeks, maybe something happened with Israel and Gaza. Let me peek back into the electorate to see, okay, with this new news event that just happened, if it has moved the needle on their attitudes or their feelings. And so that's what the purpose of polling is to be a tool, but it is not the destination. And unfortunately, the destination is now what's being shown, in the first 2 blocks of every news program, especially on cable news.
That's a good point. Polling is complicated. It is complicated.
All of it, and thing here, Dewana, again, I just think, and here's the thing right here, and let's just be frank. When you hear this criticism, that's because those in charge, the producers and the executives, they are allowing these things to happen. Period. At the end of the day, they have the power to say, hey, we're going to actually talk about the issues. Where do they stand? Unfortunately, that stuff gets left by the wayside all the time during election season. Dewana, your final comment, then I'll go to Shermichael. Let's close it out.
Yeah, I am so grateful that we have people who are experts in the polling arena. That is not my ministry or my expertise. I am a person who wants to know about the issues. I want to know who's done what. I want to hear these individuals who are vying for my vote. I want to know what are you going to do to make this place better. And it is unfortunate that we spend a lot of times on numbers. For the things that I have watched and looked at, and Roland, I'm similar to you. I can't watch a lot of this stuff because it seems to be the same rhetoric and the same conversation that is not really that I'm not really attracted to. But what I will watch is to hear about what someone has done. What has Biden accomplished? What have other people who are seeking these office, what have they accomplished, or what are they hoping to accomplish? What turns me off is the continuous attacking that we have towards each other. Watching that on a news show will make me turn the channel very quickly. So I think we do have to get back to the way that we are presenting this on various newscasts. We've got to figure out a way to really start educating the people. I agree. Being a former educator, we could have a whole nother conversation on the education piece and where we're at in this country on that. But what is getting young people's spaces right now is the media, social media. These are the things that they're listening to and that they're following, and that's how they're getting their information. So for those who have these tools, we've got to be able to educate them, but we've also got to start letting them know what's really going on in this country. And so I think we do need to start changing that narrative.
Yeah, I'm just not going to listen to a lot of these folks with the constant poll. And then the other deal, Shermichael, as we all know, it's a whole bunch of trash-ass polls out here. I mean, and the problem is because polls have now, because they now are about branding and being part of the news cycle, I swear everybody named Mama throwing a poll out. And again, if you're fixated on the polling, Biden is up +5, Trump's up +5 nationally. First of all, it don't mean nothing because the election are state elections, and that's one. But also, what we're going to do, we're going to focus on issues. We're going to say, where do the candidates stand on very specific issues to help people say, okay, now I need to make a determination who I'm going to vote for. Hopefully these yahoos and the mainstream news organizations will do the exact same thing. I will not be holding my breath, Shermichael. Final comment.
Yeah, look, I think it's incredibly important to educate people, Roland. And one of my greatest concerns as I sort of look at how the electoral maps are changing in terms of where people are and what their focuses are, how campaigns are targeting and engaging them, and how we're just talking about this in the media, generally speaking, and writing about it. The country, in many ways, we've sort of become moved by excitement and less about substance. And that's concerning, right? Because to the point that was made, Biden is too old and Trump is exciting and vibrant and vivacious. It's not necessarily about, well, how does this particular policy benefit me over another particular policy? And I think that is a part of this reality culture that we live in. Social media was mentioned. I'm concerned about that. We got to start rolling that back. I mean, there's just a serious dislocation in terms of the educational fabric of this country and people's knowledge in terms of what it takes to get things done that may be in their best interest. And I'm not saying this as a conservative. This is just something that I'm really, really concerned about, because the reality is if we don't have an educated populace, we have a serious problem. Alexis de Tocqueville visited this country in the 1700s. And one of the most fascinating things, Roland, that he wrote about the United States was from the most educated, wealthiest person in the country at the time to the poorest person in the country at the time. They were all well aware of the processes of how to move the country forward. I'm not certain that that is the case today, and I think we're seeing less and less of that as we move forward.
Well, we're going to do what we do as best that we can. Shermichael Singleton, I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Well, kudos to you, Roland, for what you're doing, man. I have a lot of respect and admiration for you. And I think it's important. I think it's important for people to have a source and an outlet where experts are coming to explain the complicated. You don't see that often.
You do not. All right. We appreciate it. Thanks so much. DeWanda, thanks a lot. Rebecca, thanks a bunch as well. I appreciate y'all being on today's show. Folks, that is it for us. I'll be back in the studio tomorrow, so look forward to seeing y'all. Don't forget, support us in what we do. Join our Bring the Fuck fan club. Your dollars are critically important for us to do the work that we do. Send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037. That's 0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be sure to download the Black Star Network app. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. You can also, of course, watch us on a variety of fast channels. First of all, check us out on Amazon News, or Amazon Fire, and go to their news area. You can check us out. You can also tell Alexa play news from the Black Star Network. Also, check out our 24-hour streaming channel out on Plex TV, Amazon Freebie, Amazon Prime Video. And be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available at bookstores nationwide. Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target. You can also get it on Amazon. And, of course, you can get the audio version. That's me reading it, of course, on Audible. Folks, that is it. I'll see you tomorrow right here, Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Holla! Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?